All right, this is Ubaid on behalf of Electronics, and in this video, we'll be talking about the expenditure multiplier. Okay, so let me write this down over here. This is your expenditure multiplier. And the expenditure multiplier has to do with personal consumption, which is a component of both aggregate demand and real GDP, as well as GDP itself. All right, and basically it has to do with income and expenses. Okay, and it assumes that one person's income is another person's expenditure. So one person's income is another person's expense. So say for example, if you were to catch a bus and you pay for your bus fare, your transit. Okay, in that case, your expenditure becomes the income for the bus driver as well as the transit in general. All right. So one person's income, okay, is another person's expenditure. And the reason why this concept is important to understand is because the formula is relevant to this concept. Okay, so if you do look at the formula for your expenditure multiplier has to do with change in GDP divided by change in personal spending is greater than 1. Therefore, we know that change in GDP is more than change in personal consumption or expenditure. Okay, so this is spending over here. Okay, and the reason why the GDP is more than personal consumption is because one person's income is another person's expenditure. So within an economy, when a buyer buys something and a seller sells something, okay, you have to consider both the seller's income, okay, as well as the buyer's expenditure for the real GDP. Okay, as a result of which your real GDP has to do with more than the personal consumption within an economy. It has to do with the income as well. Okay, so you have income and expenditure. All right, so one person's income is another person's expenditure. All right, so apart from that, okay, the expenditure multiplier is also used to figure out the effectiveness of fiscal policy. And we all know that fiscal policies have to do with things like tax cuts. All right. So in this case, we will be figuring out the impact of tax cuts, okay, on your real GDP, for example, okay, using your expenditure multiplier. Okay. So this is impact of tax cuts. All right. So again, the multiplier itself, okay, because we have a ratio over here, okay, Y, which has to do with change in GDP, divided by delta spending, which has to do with personal consumption. Okay, this ratio can either lead to a positive or a negative multiplier. Okay, so your multiplier can be either a positive or a negative figure. As a result of which, okay, this figure is effective in figuring out the effectiveness of a fiscal policy. All right. That'll be it for this video. On behalf of V Electronics, this is Ubaid. Have yourself a great day.